Hello, everyone, and welcome at today's episode where next to me I have my friends and former mentors, Brittany and Karim. Thank you for joining this call and thank you for making this episode possible. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, of Absolutely. course. Thanks so much Happy to be here, Darius. Yep, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Okay, guys, the expectations are high for today because people are actually aiming to find out how do we achieve operational excellence in a customer-centric world and way. Because this is a new obsession out there. You got to be customer-centric, and how do you do it? And I'm so happy and grateful that we're doing this episode because you guys have this in your DNA. You've started your careers here. You've grown on the corporate ladder. You climbed over there. You've seen all kind of folks, all kind of job positions, job titles, transformations, synergies. Companies bought other companies, transformed, sold, so on and so forth. And the emergence of the global phenomena that is out there, no longer serving local clients. Even if you're on the US market, you still have a global market out there, which is immense. So I would start by inviting each of you to speak about yourself a bit and tell us a bit about your background and what's your current role, please. Who wants to go first?
Brittany, I'll let you go first. Sure. Yeah, so Brittany and Jimmy, current role, I am over operational excellence at Movate right now. So very, very big role for me right now. Essentially, everything that goes into that is training, leadership development, process alignment, business implementation. So lots of different hats that I'm wearing at the moment. And that's on a global scale, which is an amazing opportunity that's come to me. I've been in the industry. I would say I'm more of a baby industry goer here compared to some of my peers, but I've definitely had a vast amount of growth in my short-lived time. I've only been in the industry for about 9.5, 10 years, so not super experienced with that quote unquote. But I've been given a lot of opportunities, a lot of growth, and a lot of evolution in that very short amount of time. So happy to be here and pass along the information as much as possible.
Thank you, Brittany. Karim?
So my name is Kareem Faruqi. I am currently the Associate Vice President over U.S. operations. I'm considered country head for U.S. operations. I have the privilege of partnering with someone like Brittany and other members of my team that we oversee about half a dozen different programs right now throughout the United States. And I've been in the industry, I'm going to age myself a bit here, but I've been in the industry for 34 years now. And I started way back in '89. And it's something that I've carried through over time and tried to just build as much experience as possible. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Well, that's that's very modest. So I'll help whoever is listening over there, deep dive a bit. Well, although Brittany, I'll start with you. If you said it's just 10 years, there's a biological clock for each and every one of us, but it depends very much on how you use that time, how you deep dive into some challenges, I would go the extra mile, how you jump on that danger when it's over there, how you take initiative, because these rewards that came towards you, and I've worked together with you in Karim, and I can tell for sure that this is not something random, okay? This is not the universe just picking you because your name is Brittany. So you totally deserve this. I'm very happy for you, and I look forward for others to find out from your knowledge. As for Karim, you said you started this in '89, so imagine what the plethora of experience that you boxed over there. So I saw your WhatsApp image was with cycling. I don't know if you still have time for cycling, yes, but a lot. So maybe you're getting some time back right now. But to build this kind of experience, maybe you had to cut some hobbies over there off your list, or some of the moments that others were enjoying. But hey, there's always a price to pay, and I'm sure glad that you guys share this mentality and you're reaping some rewards from there. Okay, so thanks for the introduction, and I wanted to mention this because you guys were a bit too modest over there. Okay, so let's see why on God's name would we choose to actually go towards a customer service career, and how would we define this industry? What makes it juicy? What makes it attractive? What made it attractive for you guys when you started?
I'll jump in, Brittany, and here and just say that yeah, I did start in '89. It was on a fluke that I got into the contact center industry really at that point in time. I was living out in the Washington D.C. area, and at that point in time, that's when D.C. was really starting to grow. When I moved there in 1980, 81, it was still almost kind of a small town as far as outside of D.C. in the Northern Virginia area. And then it just boomed by '89, where it was back-to-back traffic every day. And my sisters were out in the Midwest, and they said, pretty much come out to the Midwest for a little bit. So I came out, and I came out to Springfield, Missouri, and at that point in time, my MCI was opening a brand new site here, MCI Long Distance at the time. They were the biggest competitor with AT&T. And, I went ahead and went to apply for a job there. And fortunately, I got hired on right away, and they were opening the site. And my wife was being transferred down from Iowa at the time, where she was working on the site there, and she was coming down. Got hired on and met my wife, and the rest was kind of history.
So I kind of understand now why you went into this business. Okay. So you kind of forced because of love. Okay. It wasn't so much as a decision, it was faith for you. Okay. So.
Yes, it was. It was. And yeah, I definitely married up. So it was something that I just had to stick with. But the time to get into the customer service portion of it, MCI was pure sales, and then I moved into the third party verification side of the business, and then from there it carried into the customer care side of the business, and that's how it's really evolved over the years. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to work under a lot of different verticals, everything from, as I mentioned, telecom, financial vertical, retail, tech support, a little bit of healthcare is in there as well. So I've been fortunate to be able to dabble in each one a little bit here and there, some more than others. But that's where it's really kind of started, and that's how it's evolved into where I am today.
Your wife must be a very persuasive person, so please pass on my congratulations. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you
she's
for
much
sharing.
more talented than me, that's for sure.
Okay, let's see for Brittany, please.
Yeah, so honestly, my career started like most people's do. I was fresh out of high school. I graduated high school in 2010, and I started my career journey in about 2011, 2012-ish area. So I was just moved to Texas. I lived in California. I decided to move to be closer to my dad's side of the family over here in Texas. And I was just looking to, like most young people, get an apartment and be financially stable and all that good stuff. And AT&T was having a job hiring event at the time. So funny that Kareem started with the competitor from AT&T, and I started with AT&T.
And ended up in the same boat.
Right, yeah. But yeah, at that point, I was just I was desperate to try and find a job, and I had some friends and family that recommended to go to the hiring event, and the rest is kind of history at that point, right? And I just really took off in the environment when I was growing up through my high school years, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I kind of always gravitated to wanting to be a teacher or wanting to be somebody who was going to influence others and be able to help others grow. So it's nice that I've kind of taken full circle at this point in a little bit different of an industry, because obviously I'm not teaching children and things like that, but it's still in that teaching realm of things that I've really thrived and moved forward with. But as far as customer service specifically, I wouldn't say that I chose customer service. It was more of an opportunity at that time that I took, and then it just fell naturally with the the exposure that I was getting at that point. And I've never looked back. Just continue on growing and growing and keep going.
Well, that's very interesting. And actually, I took some notes over here, and I would like to share a bit from my experience with you guys and see if you felt the same thing. So, what I saw about this industry is that you both guys mentioned that I was looking for a job, right? So it's an industry where the barriers of entry over here are not very tough, right? Not a lot of accreditation certifications, or if you have some social skills and you're willing to listen to a client and be passionate, come with love at work, right? Love the idea of working. I think this industry, first of all, provides an opportunity to get hired really fast, and secondly provides the opportunity to be promoted very fast. I was personally shocked how quickly you can climb the ladder. If I talk about audit companies, about thinking of international corporations where more old school kind of thinking, and something that shocked me from experience in the DACH region, they looked at me and said you would have to stay according to our tradition for 10 years in a row before you can be promoted. So right, this industry in 5 years you can climb twice, thrice, right? Depends very much on how much you're willing to invest yourself and expose yourself, right? So what really attracted me personally was the possibility of getting exposed in a plethora of experience over there, because you find out from other departments, you find out from other colleagues, right? So you can't really get bored, right? If you really want to put your heart into it.
You bring up some great points there, Darius, that if you don't mind me chiming in behind you here, and that
Please.
is that when I first started in the industry and I became a supervisor and came on as a supervisor and everything, I quite frankly, I was terrible, terrible. I didn't know. I was trying to juggle my day. I was trying to manage 15 to 20 people. I was trying to figure out which way was up. I was trying to find my management style, how to coach, how to handle conflict management, the whole gamut. And it took me a while to really settle down, figure out my style, figure out what's going to work for me, and figure out how I'm going to manage my day as well. So it's not something that happens overnight, but when you do come into this industry, there is tons of opportunity. If you're going to put your head down and work and be able to show that you're committed to the job itself, there is a lot of opportunity that can be had. Because it's not that it takes some effort to make sure that you're going to be on top of everything day in, day out. So it's not something I'm going to say is an easy thing, but it can certainly be done. And you're right, you don't need to be completely accredited. You just need to kind of come in the door, make the efforts, and start working towards it, and you'll be off. But it did take me some time to really figure out my style, and then in each level that you continue to progress through your career, you learn more and more and more, and figure out that style and how that's going to work and how to manage and how to move from tactical obligations to more strategical obligations and strategies. So pretty much.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off of that as well, there's following up with both of what you guys said. There's a wealth of opportunity in the industry as long as you're willing to work for it. However, from my own personal experience as well, and this is kind of something that I teach to all of my leaders as well. I'm big on personal experience. I'm not going to tell you to do something that I haven't gone through myself, right? So one of the things that I'd like to highlight there is there are areas where you have to recognize what's needed in yourself. And you both kind of mentioned that too, right? There's going to be sacrifices that you're going to have to make along the way. And sometimes that sacrifice can be, your time. It can be a financial sacrifice. Sometimes it's your location. Sometimes it's the company or the people that you work with. Sometimes it's not the best fit in collaboration. and you have to make other moves. And I think that was something that was a very big turning point once I came to the understanding of that happening. Because as soon as I came into the industry with working with AT&T, I knew that I wanted to go into leadership. I knew it was something that I wanted to do, and I wanted to grow myself. But I just wasn't seeing the movements that I wanted to happen. I was investing myself, and it wasn't going where I
Mm-hmm.
needed it to go, right? And I put in a lot of time and dedication into that process. I was with AT&T for about 7.5 years before finally I decided, okay, you know what? I've done all of these things. Now it's time for me to move on and see if I can find some better exposure and opportunities for myself. And really, with that timeline, because I've only been in the industry for about 10 years. I was with AT&T for 7.5 of those years, and just the last 2.5 years is really when I've taken off and gotten to where I am now. So
Yeah. And you're triggering my memory on something, Brittany, that I'd like to share, and that is that I was down in, I love Texas, so Brittany keeps mentioning that she's in Texas, and I get jealous. But I actually ran a site down in Austin, Texas for 5 years. It was when I was kind of partnering with MCI and the third-party verification side of it at that time. I was running a site down in Austin, great site, great team, great people, really enjoyed it. But a new company had bought us, and they wanted to close the site in Austin. They wanted to move the business up to Vancouver, Canada. So they said, Crane, we're going to close the site, but we'd like you to go run the site up in Vancouver, Canada. So I went up to Vancouver, Canada for a few years and ran the site up there. But, it was time. Our youngest son was born in Canada, so that was a plus. But he was free. We only paid for $25 for my wife's TV in her room.
That's quite an achievement.
Other than that, he was free. It was a good plus. But we were up there for a few years, and we knew it was time to come home. My contract was pretty much up. And the point I'm getting to is that when I wanted to come back to the States, there was limited opportunity at that time. It was 2006, limited opportunity, and just looking for anything I could do. Fortunately, T-Mobile themselves, not a BPO, T-Mobile themselves was opening a brand new site in Springfield, Missouri. And I actually flew down I knew they were doing an open house, put in my resume, wasn't sure if it was being seen, was getting nervous, and I thought I really want to join T-Mobile. So I went and I flew down to Vancouver for the open house. Came in, said, hey, I flew in specifically from Vancouver to meet with you guys. Can I have a minute of your time? Got in front of the right people, got an interview, and they hired me. And they offered me an operations manager position. I was a little nervous because I was going from being a site director to an operations manager, right? The thing was, and what I learned from it, it was the best move that I ever made in my career, because I thought that I knew everything there was to know about customer service. And when I got to T-Mobile, it took me to a whole new level. Their customer service was up here. So when I was able to get in there and be able to learn really what world-class customer service looked like, to me, that was invaluable. And it was a great step back in my career that I learned so much. And then I was able to move on to bigger and better things after that. I had another company call me after that they were going to be taking on T-Mobile as a BPO or as a partner, and they said, Crane, we know you're with T-Mobile now. Would you be willing to come on? And I was able to get back into a director role from there. So it was a great step back, learned so much. And the point I'm making is these things will happen in your career sometimes, and you've got to look at it as an opportunity and not a digression, and to continue to learn so you can progress.
That's fascinating, guys. To my surprise, I wasn't aware of these stories, although we worked together. So I'm glad we had the occasion to go through them. There are a couple of key points which I see intertwining, even when I look at my career, based on what you said right now, and I think it's important to bring them forward for the listeners. I think number one is sharpen your skills towards teaching others. I think as a leader, there's no worse way to fail without having the capacity to actually teach others. Number two would be you would suck at the beginning. That there are 99% chances that you will suck at the beginning. Karim just said it right now. So if you guys don't believe me, you can believe Karim, right? So, but just because you suck, that doesn't mean you have to give up. That means you quickly have to identify what's missing. And if what's missing is in Vancouver, or if what's missing is at a different company, as Brittany said, don't wait. Apply for that job. Take the challenge. You're not going to grow in your comfort zone. And the third one is about sacrifices. Now, I'm not going to go into mythology, but all gods loved, sacrificing the corn, sacrificing the the slaughters out there. So there were a lot of examples of sacrificing. Guys, we're not asking for those kind of sacrifices anymore. But as Kareem mentioned, he flew over in a different location and knocked at the door and said, "Listen, I flew over just to talk with you guys." Who's gonna say no to that? Who's gonna say no to a crazy committed person walking in your office? It might be even dangerous to say no, by the way, these days, right? So that's an absolute guarantee, guys, that you will get those 5 minutes to actually make an impression. And the last one is don't sell BS, sell genuine knowledge, sell added value, and sell what you can bring to the table. Do you guys think I did a pretty accurate summary based on what you said so far?
Yeah.
Very good. And to your last, it's a very good summary. Just for your last point, let me chime in on one thing. It is asking the questions that when you don't know takes a lot of confidence. One of the things, one of the rules of thumb that I go into a client meeting on is I try and use a lawyer's methodology, and that is you never ask a question to a client that you don't already know the answer to. That way you can control the conversation, control the narrative, and be able to lead your client or your team in the right direction. However, it takes a lot of confidence, not necessarily with the client, but with your own internal team. It takes a lot of confidence to tell your team, help me understand this, walk me through this. I don't understand it. I need you to educate me on this, because your team is usually looking to you for leadership to be able to lead them. But you've got to swallow your pride and say, you guys know more than this than I do. I need you to educate me, because your team's going to know a lot more than you as you move up through the ladder, because you're not going to be able to get into the weeds as much as you'd like to. And it's them who know the details. And you just got to swallow your pride and say, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know what this information is. Please enlighten me, because I want to be on the same page with you.
This is extremely valuable, and I actually thought you were with me here in the room for the past 10 years, right? Because as a management consultant, I take clients from different industries. That doesn't mean I know every industry well as the person's working in the operational over there. So definitely, if you don't swallow your pride, you're gonna not win those folks over, and it's gonna be bad for you because they have the hands-on insight, which you can combine with your strategic thinking over there and provide some solutions for that company. So I think it's not only the lawyers. I think it's not only the style you're adopting. I think this is a very good skill to have to quickly look at your team, identify who is the person with the strong suit in that industry, and see what each can bring to the table and create that synergy over there. But I would like now to move a bit to Brittany because she's kind of an intense teaching role over here. So you have quite a lot of job levels to teach, to monitor, to lead by example. And you mentioned something golden, which is talk from experience, right? There's an inflation of information out there on any subject, right? But somehow experience still is the cream on top of the milk jar, right? And still is able to deliver solutions and case studies that theory could not cover so far. So I wanna invite you to share a bit from your experience of teaching others, how hard it is to mentor others, what are the main challenges you see over there, and how do people respond? Do people want to be mentored? Do they want to be forced out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, so you mentioned something interesting there, and I kind of referenced my turning point with AT&T, where I decided to kind of shift where I was going with things. And in order for me to answer that question, I kind of have to take a step back here. So
Please.
follow along with me for a second. But at that point in time, I had decided to take a leadership development class.
Mm-hmm.
that was being recommended to me at the time. That was a huge investment. I paid out of pocket for it, and it wasn't through the company that I worked for. It was just, hey, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to invest in myself type of situation. And the knowledge that I gained in that 12-week period that I went through those sessions was astronomical. And one of the things that we really invested heavily on was get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that really pushed me into, I need to go. I need to do these things. Anybody who knows me very well, I am a massive introvert. I grew up with the understanding in my household that you don't speak unless you're spoken to. And then adding in the fact that I am, let's face it, a woman in the industry, it doesn't always help with some of those types of conversations as well, right? So I've had to really step out of my comfort zone and just go, feet to the ground and run with whatever my ideas and things are to make them happen, essentially, right? So the reason why I say that is with my experience, I take all of that, everything from my childhood up through my school years, through my career. And that is how I teach other leaders. And in this role that I'm in right now, I am training all leaders to be excellent leaders across the organization. And that's for every role. That's entry level roles all the way up to director level roles, and things like that. And obviously, some of those positions, I don't know everything that has to go into it, but I talk to my counterparts, I talk to stakeholders, I do my research, I add in my own value, right? But you also have to come into the understanding that when you are teaching leaders or potential leaders, you can't know everything. They're going to bring things to the table that they teach me things all the time too, and I take that knowledge and I take it away and push it on to the next set of learners and things like that. So it's all about being open to continuously learn and grow yourself while also adapting to what others are needing, right? The big point I would like to make there is know your audience, right? Like you're gonna have some people that they're just gonna sit there and it's gonna be like you're talking to a wall, and I have plenty of those moments where I'm like, hey, anybody home? Do you guys need coffee? Like, what's going on? Are you getting it? And then I have other times where they're very invested in the conversation. They're asking me questions. They're pushing back on me. And that's another piece I'd like to add, right? If you're somebody who's interested in moving up in the industry and in your career ladder, don't just be the yes man, right? Nobody wants a yes man. Nobody wants somebody who's just, aye, captain. I'm going to do whatever you want because you're telling me to do it. I want people under me, and I want extra leaders coming into the industry is not afraid to, push that status quo and say, no, Brittany, that's not a good idea. And here's why it's not a good idea. Have you thought about this? And I think that's the big piece of it. You can't just go in and expect to quote unquote teach somebody everything. You have to be adaptable into that changing market.
Very interesting. So basically, a lot of your teaching exercise is encouraging building character, being original, and critical thinking, right? Not just being a passive listener and executing. Challenge what you're executing, see if it works in practice. Bring bottom-up feedback so we can reinvent the wheel if needed. Okay, that's interesting. So how are people from this lifelong journey of learning? Once you embrace it, a lot of opportunities actually open. And some jealous people say, "Oh, he was lucky. It's like the train just hit him. He was so lucky." But actually, they didn't see the past 20 years of investments and courses and reading and going to seminars and taking roles and challenges for which you were not paid immediately just to develop your skills and so on and so forth. So do you think people find it naturally easy? Are they open to this exercise of learning?
I think you get it on both ends. You get those people who have the natural, hey, I want to take everything in. I want to learn from the best. I want to implement. I want to do all these things. But you definitely do reach some resistance. And I would say, especially over the last, year to 2 years since the pandemic has really happened, is when I've seen the most of that quote unquote resistance kind of happening in that brain space. And it's really because the the industry has taught that we need to incentivize everything, right?
Hmm.
And it's gotten to this point where in order for people to want to do more, to do better, they come with that mindset of what am I getting out of it? When the mindset should really be what I'm getting out of it is the exposure, the experience. I'm growing myself, I'm learning myself. And we have lost that over the last few years, I feel like. And I know Kareem can kind of speak to this too, and that's on all levels. You see it, at the entry level agent coming in the door, where you have to literally incentivize them just to show up to work sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different mentality than what we were working with back when I started in the industry, where I was just like, hey, I'm here. I'm grateful. Thank you for accepting me for a job. Now I'm going to prove myself. Now it's more of the mentality of, I accepted this job as a favor to you as the company. So how are you going to reward me?
And Brittany's spot on with that, because the paradigm or the view by the person coming on, to Brittany's point, is more what can you do for me more than what can I do for you. Whenever I've come into a new role, company, partnership, or what have you, it's been in my job is to make my job is really to make your job easier. And what can I do to be able to do that? What can I contribute? How can I help you be successful? And that paradigm's changed, to Brittany's point.
And it's a global phenomenon. I'm not saying Europe is an exception here, guys. It actually might be worse in certain scenarios. But thanks for sharing those insights. And I'll start with Karim for the next question. So I want to talk about what's particular about the U.S. market and excelling and thriving on the U.S. market, and what have we learned in the past 10 years about the U.S. client, the U.S. market, the intentions, the trends, the shifts over there. So how would you describe it?
It's a good question. The U.S. market. So there's a couple things that have changed in the U.S. market. The first one I'll mention is that everybody wants to be able to work from home for the most part.
What, Karim? We shouldn't say this on the call because others might still not believe it and insist for people to come at the office. Are you sure you want to say this?
Trust me. We have some seats to fill, so I hear you. But my point is that because as bad as the pandemic was for everybody worldwide, as bad as it was, and as painful as it was to be able to get people to be able to work from home, I was with a client that I'll tell you a quick story and I'll be brief. I remember that I had a site I had two sites, one in Reno, Nevada, and one in South Carolina. And our client, the pandemic started coming to fruition, started getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And I was with my client, and they were under the financial umbrella. So they were very worried about how are they going to keep everything secure. Rightfully so. But at the same time, everybody in the world, not just in these sites, everybody in the world was going home. Everybody, all the clients were. And they knew that had to happen sooner than later. At one point, I got on the call with the client that I had at the time, and I presented them a deck that showed them how we were performing, of course, and what we were doing. And in one of the slides, I showed them, I said, just so you guys know, not only are you the last one in this site to go home, you're the last one in the country, basically.
Wow.
You gotta move faster. You gotta move faster. They just weren't moving fast enough. Fortunately, after we got off that call, within a day or two, they came back and they said, "Okay, we've got a solution, and we're sending you out all the laptops that you guys need to be able to get all your people home." That was very painful, to be honest with you, but it worked. Everybody knew that they were now able to work from home. It saves on the gas. It saves on the lunch money. It saves on daycare sometimes. It saves on a lot of different things for a lot of different people. That work from home is a lot more conducive. And there are other models being created as we speak that allow people to not only work from home, but to choose their type of shift that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And the point I'm making is that the U.S. market is definitely evolved from that. And I think it's still a little bit different than if you're putting some work in the Philippines or down in South America. I think it's still a little bit different where people still can and do understand to come into the site. Not everybody, but for the most part. But that's where the U.S. is changed a little bit. Now, when it comes to the customer service portion of it, there's a balance between when I look at some of the best customer service that I've heard. Yes, the U.S. definitely has their bright spots.
Mm-hmm.
The Philippines, their demeanor towards customer service is outstanding. It's world class. There's no doubt. At the same time, if a conflict management situation happens in the Philippines, bless their soul, any one of them will tell you that it's going to go a little bit sideways because they're not good as conflict management as you would find in the United States. So there's a balance there. And Brittany, I'll let you chime in on your thoughts on what I've mentioned so far. But those are some of the things that I've noticed so far between any differences in the markets.
Yeah, I think Kareem made some good points with that. Right now, in my role that I have the opportunity in a global position. So I'm working with multiple different geographies all at one time. And I think my biggest struggle when I first started this role with taking all of that on was how am I going to work with all of these different types of people at the same time? Because I had times in my past where like I would consult with the Philippines, I would consult with Costa Rica, I would consult with Poland, but it was more on that one-on-one type of basis. And now I've come into this role where I have to do all of it at once. So I'll go from one call where I'm talking to people in India, and then I'll go on to another call and I'm in Colombia now. Nope, now I'm to the US. So it has taken a lot of juggling, right? And the reason why I say that is I think the big differences in the market is the people, right? And that comes down to the culture because to Kareem's point that he made, I can go in and I can train a class in the US, and I know that if they don't agree with me, they're going to say, "Hey, Brittany, I don't agree with you, and here's why." Right. And they're all about the back and forth. And I know that coming into those US classes, I have to really sell them on why they should care about being in that environment, right? But then to Kareem's point, when I go to the Philippines, it's a lot of, "Oh, yes, ma'am, take everything I say." They don't question absolutely anything. So I have to really come in with the mindset of, okay, are you guys actually agreeing with what I'm saying? Are you actually taking away what I'm saying? Or are you just telling me that because you don't want to start the conflict, right? So I think the culture is really big on that. But also you get into, the legalities of everything as well. And that was something that was a big shocker for me with moving into this position as well, because I was used to, everything we had to do in the US. This is what you have to do to terminate an employee. If you're having issues with somebody, this is the disciplinary action process. This is what you can do. And then, and Darius, you know this from your various projects, things too. You start working with somebody else and you say, okay, look, I have this employee. They're not the best employee. We need to start to work them out of the system or do X, Y, Z. And then you start to run into roadblocks. Oh no, we have to give a 3-week notice. We have to deliver a letter in person. We have to do this. We have to do that. So understanding all of those nuances I think is really the key difference between the different markets out there.
Brittany brings up a great point that I'm glad you refreshed my memory on that, Brittany. When I was in Vancouver, that was a big learning lesson for me because the labor laws there are quite different. So even if you think that that someone may not be a good fit, and you've gone through all the steps to be able to coach, develop, provide opportunity, just everything, and it's still not a good fit, there's a lot of steps that need to be going into to make sure that the country labor laws feel as though this person has been given all the opportunity to be able to be successful with your company. And that's why in those types of situations, it is so important to be able to be hiring the right fit from the very beginning. Because if you don't, you could be setting yourself up with working with a team, not just one person, but a team of people that may not be on the same wavelength as you as far as the direction that that program, team, or company may be going towards. So it's really important from everything that Brittany mentioned as well.
I am running out of sticky notes here, guys. So please bear with me coming back a bit to some of the golden tips you've mentioned over here. To share my point of view, what I think has drastically changed in this industry, in U.S. culture especially, I see that we have transitioned. I think it started a while ago, but now it has really reached its peak with a lot of VCs funding businesses and just looking at the percentage in return, regardless of the churn, attrition, shortcuts. What do we have to do to actually improve our return on investment? That's number one. Number two is, and that's making things prone to failure, right? It's gonna go a year, two, three, 30,000 employees, 50,000 employees, but you're gonna reach a certain number, a certain time when that's gonna collapse like a house of cards. Unfortunately, you're gonna be that big company that one day they spoke of, and now it's embarrassing to work with. So that's number one that I've seen so far. And number two is that money usually that it's coming with investment in U.S. companies comes from abroad, and they are tied to some cultural strings, and those cultural strings actually burn the steps. So if it's possible for us to do 5x in Eastern Europe or 5x in Asia, it should be possible to do at least 5x in US also, right? And I mean that's the approach, the theory, and this is what made me extremely unpopular in the past, right? Because I would always be that kind of guy on call, say, sorry, but Europe is different, or sorry, but things are done different, and it would be like. That guy that you tried to bring at a party, but you would leave him a bit in the corner because if you ask him about his music preferences, no one is gonna dance. So it kind of went that way at some of those meetings, but I'm actually glad that I pointed out those dangers out there. And you've mentioned something really important over there, that it's kind of our role as leaders to actually create the environment for others to flourish and to make sure that they have everything over there to make their work efficient, so that then we can draw a conclusion if they are fit or not fit for this career or this job. And unfortunately, as people are running out of time and they just want to burn through some steps, I see this being practiced less and less today. It's like, oh, if he doesn't confirm in 3 days, we're just going to move to someone else, right? And this is not the U.S. culture. This is the global pace, the global culture that I see over there. And last but not least, and I think this has to do very much with an industry that is marked with growth. It fits here as an observation also, but if we look at an industry and we see a drastic growth, you would see that companies outgrow the way they have their processes taught, or their foundations taught, right? And that's when their way of running becomes their arch enemy and their biggest stop in their way of growth. So My advice would be, guys, reinvent yourselves. Do the RCA over there. Talk with folks that you've actually hired from bigger companies. Listen to them and streamline the process. Otherwise, you're going to kill those folks, and the entire thing is going to drag you down worse than a sea anchor. Was I too blunt here, guys?
No, I think you're spot on. Yeah, everyone doesn't fit into one box, right? And that's for individuals, but that's for clients. It's for cultures. It's for companies. It goes with everything. And I think, especially when you talk about companies that do have that global footprint, you fall victim into that, right? Usually, wherever the hosting quote unquote country is, right? They come up with their policies, they come up with their procedures, and then they hand it out to everyone else and say, okay, everybody else and all the other geos follow suit. This is what needs to happen. But it's not always the case, right? You have to mold it to, again, your audience, right?
So can we make a golden rule there for this industry and say first understand the culture, then do business? Is this a good golden rule?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Now, I got a very interesting question because I think each of us have seen, worked in smaller companies, in large organizations. And when we talk about large organizations, we can talk about 100,000 employees worldwide or more than that. I want to ask you guys, what were the significant differences that you've experienced by working, in a smaller agency shop than to such a big mammoth kind of agency? Who wants to go first?
I'll let Craig speak first on that one.
Oh, okay. It's a good question. I'm trying to think back through my career. When I was in Austin, I worked for, even though I was partnering with MCI, I was a subsidiary of MCI, that it was a smaller group. There was some good and bad about those types of scenarios. The good is that the communication can be a lot more clear and concise because of the audience that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that being able to manage a team that's sizable, that you're not overwhelmed, being able to have the right vision from the entire company, that's really important. Making sure that you are embracing their what do you call it, their culture and their beliefs, so to speak, their values, excuse me. And by the way, T-Mobile, I thought, had the best values I'd ever seen in any company I was there with. I can speak about that later if need be, but that was they were impressive the way they broke it down. And those were some of the better things about being a small company. I would say some of the detriments was, what opportunities are there? If you're in a role, are we growing to an extent that people are going to have opportunities to grow? Maybe to a certain extent, as far as supervisor, manager, maybe senior manager, those types of levels. But when you're going up further up the ladder, it's going to start getting tight as far as where you can go with your career. The bigger companies, the opportunity for growth is there. The opportunity for experience is there, because with a smaller company, you may only have a few clients that you're really going to be able to be under so many verticals. With a bigger company, a BPO, as I mentioned earlier on, you could be under telecom, you could be under the financial vertical, you could be under the auto vertical, you could be under the tech support, retail. There's a conglomerate of different verticals that you can fall under, and be able to learn a lot from each one as far as how the industry works, best practices, best processes, things to that degree. So it's a give and take. I think the bad part about a big company is that you could get lost in the shuffle. If you're not going to be going, it's almost like going to the big leagues. If you're a rock, when you are, what do they always sit there and say? When let me use, I could use baseball or football as an analogy, but I'm going to use cycling. Okay, they used to sit there and say that the top cyclists that would ride in the Tour de France and things like that, they were all They're state level, they were all country level, they were all Olympic level. They just grew from there and they got to the elite level to be able to do the Tour de France, so to speak. And you would look at the same way for pro football or something. Statewide, champions, college, pro. But when you're getting to the pro level, the big level, the competition rises so much that you are in competition with a lot of people that all have the same type of determination, if not more than you do, and want to rise to the top and are going to do anything they can to shine. And you've got to pick your opportunities to be able to say, to raise your hand and say, I'll volunteer for that. I'll take that on. I'll go into this vertical. I'll do this. I'll do that, just to be able to absorb it so that you can, one, get some experience, and two, let yourself shine so that they'll see that you have the capacity to take on other things in the future to grow. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And before we move to Brittany, I just want to help my European folks and my European audience make an analogy with soccer, aka football, as we call it, right? Because yes, the cycling is a bit of a niche sport over here. But guys, not everyone is a David Beckham in Europe and in at LA Galaxy, right? So you might be quite good where you are right now in your current, team, company, location. But when you outreach, you might be a John Doe before you make that rock star phenomena again. So you gotta be able to roll your sleeves and work your elbows. Okay, so just wanted to make an analogy over here. Thanks for sharing, Corinne. Brittany, what do you think the pluses and minuses?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Kareem said. Um, there's a lot of key differences, right? Obviously, with bigger companies with more headcount and things of that nature, you're going to have the advantages, which is the financial pieces of things. You have more job security a lot of the times. You're not afraid that contracts are going to come and go and all of those nuances. So there's the obvious advantages of that. But then there's the disadvantages that people don't always think about, which kind of plays tune into what Kareem was saying, right? I started my career with a very large company, and it was hard to get my foot into the door. Yes, you would assume, right, with a company so large, it would mean more opportunities, more room for growth. Well, yes, that is the case, but it's also, you get into that dog eat dog type world, and you have people throwing other people under the bus to get there, and so many people going for that same opportunity that you're going for, right? So it makes it a lot more difficult to step out and shine against other people, especially when you're in this digital day and age, right, where you can go on and you can Google everything. You can get an AI assistant for everything, and you can get the answer to anything at your fingertips. So it's not really about the knowledge you bring to the table all the time. It's about the experience and the exposure and what sets you apart. What's your superpower in that instance, right? And when you're working for a larger company, it's harder to outshine in those areas of things, because again, it's like everyone's the same. So why should I look at you? It's more of a numbers game versus a people oriented type of situation. Whereas when you come to the smaller companies, yes, you might not have as much exposure in verticals, similar to what Kareem said, but you do have more of that opportunity to make a name for yourself, because there's not as many quote unquote names in the pool there, right? So it kind of has its advantages and disadvantages on both sides, depending on what you're looking for, what's your goal, what do you want to happen, what's important to your value system, right?
And I think our advice would be for the audience: take both roads, because you don't really understand what's missing, or what you are actually not exposing yourself to if you haven't tried that path. You might not like it, but it's just 1 year. So one year flies by very fast, but you would at least understand what you value with your former employer, current employer, what you expect from your future employer, and you need to look at these beyond the theory sometimes. So have the courage to take those opportunity. Just gonna make a small recap for the audience. Some of the pluses of working in a smaller company would be the rock star phenomena. Eventually, if you become really good, being more aligned in terms of mission, vision, values over there, communication streamline, and bandwidth as a person, because you might not be overstretched as running a global team until the shuffling is done there with the support structure roles and everybody settles in, to say so. But at the same time, it comes with a price of perhaps limited opportunities, maybe just one vertical kind of clients, right? So they kind of come with the same challenges. They're not going to provoke you with many things new in time. And there will be this sense of alienation maybe in very big companies, right? As you said, you're just John Doe or Jane Doe over there. That doesn't mean you can't become a rock star, okay? But I think the message we're passing on over here is don't do it over dead bodies. And I think what I read between the lines over there, both of you were pointing out towards ethics, right? I focus on my work, I do my work, I try to empower others, but I don't do it at any cost. Okay, and that might work once, twice, but it will happen to you also. There, what goes around comes around, and eventually you'll end up at that crossroad over there, and someone else's ethics will affect you. So I don't wish anyone to get at that crossroad over there when someone else's ethics, their job depends on someone else's ethics, but it can happen. Bottom line is at the end of the day, you have to go to sleep and be at peace with your ethics that you brought as a leader by example and for others that you're trying to bring upward in this industry. Okay? So I was just summarizing, reading between the lines of what you guys said. Please, please feel free to correct me if I've missed anything.
No, you're absolutely right. And just to put it in terms of my mind, if you're helping your team shine and you're helping your peers shine, you'll shine at the end of the day. It'll be seen. And the better you can do that, to your point, Darius, the better off. Not only are you going to feel good about the work you did that day, but it's going to get noticed down the road.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to kind of follow up as a tail end to that conversation is in whichever side you decide to go with, right? Whether it's large company, small company, whatever it is. One piece of advice I have there is if you're not happy with how things are, if something is missing, if there's a gap, then do something about it. Like I hear so many people on both sides of the spectrum, right? I don't like my boss for XYZ. I don't like my job for XYZ. I'm not happy with the pay. I'm not happy with the location. They're making me go back on site. We always come with all of the excuses, but my answer to those excuses is, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Like the excuses are always going to be there. So what are you doing with those excuses? Make a change. If you don't like it, change, right? And sometimes those changes are hard. I was at AT&T for 7.5 years. That was hard for me to be like, no, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm going somewhere else. But at the end of the day, I wasn't getting the exposure that I wanted to get. So I moved in with that head first. I jump, I figure it out later mentality. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, right? We get stuck in that fixed mindset of coming up with all the excuses and looking at everything as a roadblock versus how can I take this roadblock and change it into an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darius, if I could chime in, I don't
Please.
want to go off topic of your
point. No. I'm going to stop you if that's going to happen, and I'm going to come back to the agenda. But nothing is off topic because they're really intertwined. Okay. So please, Karim.
So the other thing that I'll mention, since we're kind of talking about having, helping your people shine, helping your team shine, if you want to go far, there's two things that you can do to really to let people know that you're a team player and that you have their best interests in mind. Mm-hmm. One is to help your boss shine. That is really important because if you are like I said earlier in our conversation, that my job is to make their job easier. And if I can help them make them shine to their boss along the way, your job is a lot easier. They're going to value you. They're going to confide in you. They are going to have confidence in you, that you have their best interest in mind, you have the company's best interest in mind. The second thing is that a lot of times when we go into QBRs, WBRs, let me rephrase that just for your audience. If you're going into weekly business reviews, quarterly business reviews, yearly business reviews, whatever it might be, monthly business reviews, and you're going in there with the objective to present to your client, a lot of times, particularly rookies, they come to the table and fall under the realm that I am being inspected now by my client. I'm being inspected. I have to be prepared that I'm going to be asked questions. So I'm already on the defensive. That should not be your approach. Your approach needs to be, what am I going to bring to the table that's going to help educate my client to be able to enhance their business overall? And if I'm bringing that value add to the client, two things are going to happen. One, the vendor manager, director manager, whoever it may be that you're partnering with on the client side, one is going to get educated on what's happening in their business. And two, when they bring that back to their boss and say, this is what I learned today, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to move forward, it's going to help them shine. So if you're able to package that and add and be the value add to their business, it makes everybody's life a lot easier. They as a partner confide a lot more into you. They count on you more. It helps only build your business more in the program.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. You don't need to spend $777 on that course of, becoming the best partner for your boss. You just found out the secret sauce today. So the key is to help others first shine, and some of the shyness will cascade towards you also. Please, Brittany.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, right? We always come into situations where it's, what do I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get what I want, which obviously is important, right? But we're not always willing to put in the work that goes into that piece as well. I have so many people that have come to me and said, Brittany, I want to get to where you are. I want a promotion. I want a raise. I want this to happen. I want that to happen. And then when I give out tasks and I give, recommendations and things for them, it turns into, oh, no. I'm not going to give up my Saturday so that I can do this.
I want the benefits, but I don't want the responsibility.
Exactly. Yes. So
Can you sign me in? Can you sign me in for that one, please?
Yeah, you have to be willing to put in the work behind the responsibility. It may look great on paper. It may, do all the bells and whistles for you there, but you gotta put in the work, right? And that part of that work is making your boss look good, making your company look good. Sometimes we come in and we say, oh, I'm not going to do any of these things because I don't believe in it. It's not a value situation or anything. It's just I don't agree with having to do that thing. But instead of coming with a different solution, they just decide to not do it at all. And now their boss or their leader is kind of in the doghouse because they didn't do what they needed to do, and it kind of snowball effects from there. But it's a good point that Kareem made, right? Like, you need to make your boss's life easier or your leader's life easier. But in return, the point of the leader is to make their team's life easier as well. So it's a partnership, right, with that relationship.
So, Simon, I hope you're listening to this podcast because we're big fans of Leaders Eat Last, your book. Okay, I hope you subscribe to this podcast. Thanks for sharing, guys. I think that's extremely valuable. And the earlier we learned this aspect that we have to lead by example, we have to help others first, and then if that some of that shining cascades, then that's okay. If not, kudos, you still did a great job. If others shine and you didn't, you still have to keep on and push on. And I think there are a lot of situations where I see. For me, the business card of a manager is the people that work under them. I think that is extremely valuable. And if I were to run a Fortune 500 company ever, the first thing I would do when I brought guys over in executive leadership roles, I would give them the full opportunity to restart again and evaluate the teams and evaluate the processes and not be afraid to change. Okay, it might turn messy, it might turn bloody because it might end up being a complete surgery. But what people need to understand, there's not a huge difference between a business mentality and a person's mentality. So if someone wants to go to the next level, whether it's a business or it's a person, you have to change your mentality. You have to change how you live, what you put and pay up front, how you think, how you view, how you reflect, how you sleep. If you're not willing to pay that price, your business would not do the hockey stick, will not experience the hockey stick effect in revenue that you forecasted, or you won't see that kind of independent team that you were kind of, bragging at your last executive lunch that you had with other folks from other companies said, "Oh, my team is very independent. Are you coming golfing this Saturday?" "No, I can't because I had to handhold her in for a conversation with the client." But you just said your team's independent, right? So, so that's your first sign that you fail as a leader over there. So, very interesting, guys. Now that we spoke about this leadership component, about what changed in this industry and in this market, could we make like a small summary of what would it take, that the top tips to actually be able to accelerate on the corporate ladder in this industry? What would be your top, let's say, 3 to 5 to keep in mind?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think number one is commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really boils down to, are you going to show up or are you not going to show up? And I know that some people can look at that as attendance, and some people look at that as the jobs that you actually do when you're there. In my opinion, when you have a job, attendance should be a given. Like I'm a firm believer of when you have a job, you should just be there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's not really the commitment piece that I'm talking about there. The commitment piece is, what are you doing when you're there, right? Can you be relied upon? Can you be that person that, to your point, Darius, doesn't need their hand held, right? So commitment is very big. Continuous adaptive learning is another one. You need to be open to grow and change yourself. Even if you are brilliant at something today, doesn't mean that you can't be even better at it tomorrow. And a lot of us get into that mentality of, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with that at all. I kind of go with the mentality of, okay, it may not be broke, but how can we make it better, right? And that's the mentality that a lot of people need to realize if they want to go far into this type of environment. The third one I would say is communication. Uh, it's not a secret. Some people are great at communicating. Some people suck at it. And this is something that I teach my leaders all the time too. And you're going to see it on both ends of the spectrum. And whether the person that you're communicating with is good or they're bad at it doesn't change how you are as a communicator. I don't care what they're doing on their side. What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? And communication is really, really important. It builds trust. It builds that foundation. It builds everything that makes a business really run successfully, right? Number
Mm-hmm.
4, I would say strategic leadership is an absolute need, and a lot of people don't really understand what goes into that strategic leadership. At the end of the day, running your business strategically is helping that business to grow and supporting their goals, supporting their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And if your goals and your needs, your vision, your values don't align with your company's, then that just means it's time to find a new company, right? Because if you're constantly butting heads back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be happy and you're not going to love your job. And at the end of the day, that's what we all want. We want to come into work. We want to love what we're doing every day. We don't want to be miserable. So you have to be able to align with the business and strategically lead that business. At the end of the day, everything that we do impacts the business in some way, shape, or form. And we don't always think about what our actions are doing to the business at the end of the day. And I see that at all levels, right? I see team leads that will come in and they'll try to save somebody on their team because they feel bad and this person has, XYZ going on at home. And while yes, we understand all of that, but at the end of the day, how is that individual impacting your business, right? And those are common discussions that go into strategically leading the business, and that comes with tough conversations. It comes with tough decisions. That's part of being a leader. And if you're not willing to take on that sacrifice, right, then it's not a good fit for you, and that's okay. Find something that is. And then the last one, we've kind of already talked about it a lot, is that idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I am really big on creating your own opportunities. Don't just wait for them to come to you. And part of that is that jump first mentality. In my first years of my entry level business into AT&T and everything, I was very much so in that area of I'm going to do whatever my boss tells me to do. I'm going to be the perfect employee. I met all of my metrics. I was, top 10 in the call center for years on end. And then I got really upset that nothing was happening to me. I was like, why am I not getting promotions? Why am I not having this? Why am I not having that? And then somebody came to me at one point and they said, well, Brittany, yes, you look good on paper, right, with all these things, but what sets you apart? Nobody knows who you are. And that sentence right there changed everything for me when they said, nobody knows who you are. And at that point, that's when I enrolled in that leadership development class that I talked about earlier. And I said, well, everyone's going to know who I am.
That was a great, that was like a divine intervention from being a vanilla type person to actually developing a unique personality that actually knows what they bring to the table and has critical thinking and own inputs to actually give someone, right? So that was kind of
exactly.
pivoting.
It was my brand shift, right? I teach leaders all the time how to build their brand, how to cultivate their brand. And really branding is, at the end of the day, it's your perception. It doesn't matter how you feel like you are presenting yourself to other people, because in my mind, in those days, I said, I'm meeting every single metric. I'm doing everything my boss is telling me to do. I'm working the overtime. I'm doing all of these extra things. So why am I not getting everything? But the perception on the other end was completely different. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody actually recognized that I was doing any of those things because I wasn't going out and I wasn't talking to people. I was staying stuck in my shell, right? So that's key, right? And that's kind of goes into my last point I want to make with those tips is you have to build your brand and you have to live that brand. Perception is everything. Doesn't matter what you intended to happen. If the person on the other end perceives you as that not happening, there's a problem and you need to fix it.
That is a fantastic sticky note to have close whenever you're starting in a career. Thanks, Brittany. Karim, what would you add on top of that?
So I just want to, what's the right word? Just kind of emphasize what Brittany said there as far as her taking control of her own career. I've seen her do that firsthand, and she's great at it, where she steps up, makes the opportunities for herself, and builds on it. So it's been a wonderful pleasure to see Brittany do that, and she does it very well. So kudos to her on that. I think she said a lot of the same things that I would say as well. She's spot on with all of her feedback and everything she mentioned. I'll tell you two quick small stories. When I was with MCI, a gentleman by the name of Wayne Hewer was I think at that time he was either vice president or senior vice president of MCI Mass Markets at that time. And so he's in charge of all the sales of that group. And he was visiting our site here in Springfield, Missouri. And I wasn't sucking up to him, and I made that clear to him, but I walked up to him and said, wait, he gave us a big presentation. And anybody that asked him a question from a group of nearly, 75 people, 50 to 75 people of leadership in that building at the time, anybody that asked him a question, Spot knew the answer, knew it right away, where the company was going, benefits, strategy, details, next steps, everything, just knew everything right away. Didn't even think about his answer. Just, yep, this is this. And I walked up to him afterwards, or he came over to my bay where I was managing my people, and he was coming to say hi. And I said, Wayne, I said, really impressive meeting. I said, I'm not trying to sound like I'm sucking up or something, but how do you know so much? How do you stay on top of all that? In your role, how do you do it? I mean, every question that came your way, you knew it right away within a second. How do you know all that information? Everything from the strategy to the benefits, everything. He goes, Scream, you got to read everything. Everything you can get your hands on, you got to read. Got to read everything.
Wow.
I thought, ooh, and as simplistic as that sounds, we don't always do that. And I am guilty of that more than anybody because it takes a lot of effort to read, whether it be, for me at least, whether it be a book that's going to be, I'd much rather listen to your podcast, Darius, than get a book that I have to, put some effort into reading.
I'm flattered.
But whether it's a book or whether you have 50 emails that you have to go through, you have to have the discipline to go through it and read everything so that you can be able to absorb all that information. It sounds simplistic, it sounds basic, it seems like common sense, but not everybody is able to do it because it takes time and it takes effort and it takes discipline to do it. That's one thing that I want to mention. Just read whatever you can get.
Can I make a small, short, funny bracket over here? I'm so glad to hear that I don't have some sort of disease for reading highlights and lowlights of other geographies during my weekend, right? So it was one of my, let's say, small habits during the weekend to actually look what's not working in other geographies, right? Because I was thinking maybe, and I think there were some situations when I actually spoke with someone and said, look, this is backfiring in my geography also, and we're trying this, and maybe you can try that. But it was exactly as you said, it was such a boring summary to read, like hundreds of slides. And as you said, you have to have that discipline to actually go through it because you don't know when what you're picking up right now you're actually going to use in your favor or to help others shine. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing this case study because I now found out that I don't have a problem or a disease. It's absolutely normal to read everything. So thanks.
No, trust me, it's one of my biggest weaknesses. I have to admit, I have to hunker down and really make sure I'm not being. One thing I'll mention is that Darius, you and Brittany both know that when we are in our day-to-day routine, we are on back-to-back calls almost all day long. There's very few in-betweens that we have. And if we do, it may be 5 minutes to go refresh our cup of coffee or something like that, right? And the point I'm making is that a lot of times I will not attempt to try and give my emails or presentations or whatever half effort and do it during those times where I know I'm back-to-back all day. I will have to, after I'm back-to-back all day, maybe take a break for an hour or two, be with the family, have my dinner, and it's back online to really be able to sit down, not be disturbed, not be interrupted by IMs, not be interrupted by the next call that's coming up, and really go through all my emails and go through presentations that need my 100% focus. You've got to do that sometimes because if you're back-to-back all day in meetings or IMs or whatever it might be, or putting out fires, it can get very distracting, for me at least. So I use that time during the evening to try and catch up and then make sure that I'm giving my effort, giving my 100% attention to those types of things that need it. One other story I'll mention real quickly to piggyback off of what Brittany was talking about is that I will never, ever claim, and Brittany can attest to the fact of this probably, because she's seen it firsthand. and that is that I will never attest to the fact that I'm the smartest guy in the room. I will never attest to it, and I will never say that I'm going to know everything that's going to be in there when we're all in a room together. My team, as I mentioned earlier, is going to know a lot more than me. But the one thing that I pride myself on, and I kind of, I'll give you my analogy, and that is that I love to do triathlons. I do at least 3 to 4 triathlons every year, just short sprints, but just something to keep me active and keep me motivated through the spring and summer, right? And I was sharing this with somebody else the other day. I'm not going to be the fastest swimmer coming out of the water. I'm not going to be. I'll be mid-pack on the swim. The bike, I'll be, upper echelon on the bike, but still not the fastest biker. Runner, again, upper echelon running, not going to be the fastest runner out there. But here's the caveat. I am going to make sure that when I'm doing my triathlons, nobody's going to outwork me. No one's going to outwork me in my training. No one's going to outwork me on the field or on the course. And I'm going to make sure that I am tight in everything that I do when it comes down to my training and to my preparation, so that I am ready to go, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to give the perfect performance I possibly can out of myself at that time. And I apply those same disciplines in my job, where I'm going to make sure that no one's going to outwork me. I'm going to put forth everything I can in my effort to make sure that I'm going to be prepared, that I'm going to be disciplined, and that I'm going to get the work done that I need to, so that I can help, one, most importantly, the team and the company shine, but also make sure that I'm not going to get out there and embarrass myself or something to that degree as well.
Fantastic, Golden, and I think it's always of huge added value to explain something through a personal lens, through a personal view, or through a personal experience. And at the end of the day, you just said discipline so many times that that's the message out there. Do what you have to do when you have to do it, whether you feel like it or not. Just do it. You just have to pull your own weight over here. There is someone special that, since you mentioned that guy that left an impression, there is someone special from movie that I want to mention. His name is Om. He is the senior vice president for enterprise support line of business, and he was definitely a mentor for me at making sure that you don't miss an email. Not only that you don't miss an email, you make sure you hear what it's not being said, and you read what it's not being written. So, I want to thank you for this valuable lesson and for helping open my eyes over here. The closing message, just to put on the list that you've built, guys. It's quite a solid list, but I just want to have one over there if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Guys, if you get a job or if you start in this industry, in any industry, stop complaining about problems without providing at least 3 solutions. Okay? Don't come to your boss and say, oh, this is so frustrating. This sucks. I mean, that's the last thing he wants to hear or she wants to hear that day. She knows it's sucking. Trust me. She knows it's sucking also. But what you should do is get 3 solutions, okay? But before you go in that office and provide your solutions, make sure you do a dry run with some of your colleagues, because if they come like from a Walt Disney movie, you should rethink those solutions. Maybe you're going to embarrass yourself in front of your boss, so don't do that. So what you should think when providing a solution is, does the company have the resources to actually implement that? Is it possible? Is there someone with expertise or someone that can be accessed externally to bring that kind of thing that we need and we are missing? And is it actually going to help? Okay, so if you can answer these 3 questions with the solution that you're shortlisting for your boss, then you should walk with confidence in that office and share that sticky note. And I'm gonna tell you the secret. This will get you really far, especially if one of your solutions will actually solve the problem. So as otherwise said, as Brittany and Karim said, help your boss shine. Okay.
Even better if you can tie that back to how will it make the company more money?
Okay. That's
right on that.
now we're getting. That's a perfect segue, right? That's a perfect segue. You just opened over there, Brittany, for some of the next topics over there, in which we should develop and sharpen this mentality from a very early age within an industry. We need to understand that in order for a company to actually give more money to its folks, or provide better conditions or work equipment or fringe benefits, it's got to make more money, right? So at the end of the day, we have to keep this extremely realistic about what's possible and what's not possible. And if you want to change something, if you can bring an initiative, a solution, a recommendation, something that will make the company more money, I think you're gonna take the place even of the guy helping the boss shine. So that's gonna be a huge added value for you. Okay, guys, I wanna talk with you about something that this industry, the customer service support experience itself, industry, has in common with the stock market, and that's volatility of the client sentiment. I mean, one day you're my favorite pal. I'm gonna go for a beer with Karim, Darius, and Brittany. And next week they're like, "Oh my God, I hate interacting. They're so annoying. They don't understand my need." Of course, I'm dramatizing right now. I'm paid as an actor, so you can imagine how well I'm paid right now, right, to do this. But I want to talk about this volatility of clients' feelings towards us, the project, our team, and invite you guys to share from experience and some of the things we can do to fight this volatility.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start and I'll let Kareem kind of piggyback afterwards.
Sure.
But when it comes to the client relationship, and this may just be, because I'm so fresh from being the customer service representative too. Um, the client relationship is no different than the relationship between a customer service representative and a customer. We don't really think about that all the time, and follow along with me for a second
Please.
why I explain that. But when you work with customers, in the front line, they may love you, they may hate you, but at the end of the day, what's important with that interaction is what's the solution, right? What can we do? How can we move forward? How can we strengthen the relationship? How can we keep that customer coming back as a customer, right? The same type of philosophy applies back to the client relationship too. Of course, it's on a higher level. There's more financial impact and risk and things like that that go in with it. But at the end of the day, it boils down to the partnership, right? Are you communicating with them? A lot of the times we fall victim into the us versus them type of mentality happening, where I hear all the time, my client is so difficult. My client never responds. My client, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my question to that is, okay, well, what are we doing on our side? You say that your client is complaining about XYZ happening. What is your solution to resolve XYZ happening? Well, what are you doing? How are you strengthening that? And if you don't have an answer to that question, then you're not helping yourself. You're not strengthening that relationship. And I see the client relationship go downhill so quickly when that does happen, because we're not willing to put ourselves into those shoes all the time, right? And I know that that's kind of a sticky topic when it comes to the BPO industry, because obviously on our side, we need to think about, okay, how can I meet my deliverables? How can I meet my financials? How can I make sure that I'm billing all the things that need to be billed to the client so that I can keep on getting growth and keep getting more business and yada, 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 right? But you also have to consider the client's end, right? What is that relationship that the client is having with you? If all you're doing is coming to the table all the time and saying, no, that's not working, we need to bill you more, we're not going to do that, I'm not going to accommodate this, then the client's not going to give you any of that positivity coming back, right? And you may bicker, That's okay. But at the end of the day, we're all one team. It's a partnership. It's not us versus them. It's a partnership. And it's the same within your family dynamic too, right? You may bicker, you may fight. Sometimes you may not always agree. But at the end of the day, if somebody is over here saying that my sister or my brother wasn't doing something that they needed to do, I'm going to back them and I'm going to say absolutely not, even if I don't know all the facts, right? And it should be the same type of situation happening with the client relationship as well.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think Brittany articulated very well. One thing I'll add is that in our, maybe just not in our industry, but I've been in it so long, I see it mostly in our industry, and that is, unfortunately, you're only as good as your last week, your last cycle, your last month, and there's a lot of pressure from different ends. As I mentioned earlier, part of your job or part of our job is to ensure that our client shines and that we are providing them, but they have to meet their deliverables too. And what's really important, and I'll just kind of piggyback off this from Brittany, is that it's really important that the expectations are clear up front of what the expectation is of your vendor manager, your director manager, your vendor director, excuse me, what their expectations are from their boss. Because if you can get aligned of what they're accountable for and help them get to that avenue, it's going to help them. It's going to help your relationship with them a lot easier. So again, if you're performing 1 month and you are just knocking out of the park, but then you drop 2 points the next month, it's almost like sometimes it feels like you're going to lose the contract tomorrow because of it. And it's not necessarily the case. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. But at the same time, you feel the pressure of that. And it's a matter of making sure that there's consistency. And that if you if you are going to be seeing or feeling a dip, whether it be because you're bringing more people on and you're expecting a dip, or because it's a seasonal dip, that you are communicating those things ahead of the time to your vendor and director managers so that they can be prepared that they're going to see that ahead of time and they can give the warnings to their bosses ahead of time. That way, nobody's blindsided. One of the things that I always try and tell my bosses is that I'm going to always make sure that you're not blindsided. And the same thing should go for a client too. That if something goes wrong, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find out what the root cause was, put some quick mitigation in place, if not a solution, and then I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call them, whether it be my boss or whether it be the client, and say, hey, I need to give you a heads up on something that just went wrong. I'm going to make a mistake. Anytime I'm going to make a mistake. My team, there will be a mistake that happens within my team. But as soon as you are able to identify those things that happen, whether it be for myself individually or the team in general, I got to call these guys and let them know what mistake happened. So again, they're not blindsided and they can be prepared. If you can make sure that your client is prepared for any phone call from their boss or anybody else in their company to say, did you see what just happened? They made a big mistake over there. If they can sit there and say, yep, I'm aware. Kareem's already called me. Kareem gave me the solution they put in place. It's already been documented and it's being taken care of. It makes their life 10 times easier. So it's just a matter of being proactive in that approach to build that relationship so that when your performance does dip a little bit and you find it being volatile, that you already have that relationship built. So it's not, that trust is there, that it's not going to stay for long.
And there's a key that Kareem just said there with, notifying them ahead of time, keeping them in the loop, but already having a solution in place. That is key. Your clients don't want to hear you say, hey, we're not meeting our CSAT and just dropping it, right? What they want to hear is, hey, we're not meeting our CSAT. This is what we're already doing to fix it. Not this is what we're going to do to fix it. This is what we're already doing. We're already making motion. We're already, we've recognized it. We're taking care of it. We're ready to go and we're moving forward with it. And that's part of that strategic leadership that we've talked about too.
Yeah, I think there. I'm gonna try to make like a 4 or 5 bullet point summary of what you guys said right now for the audience, and I'll save the last for my input to this cake to say so. So be proactive instead of being reactive. Don't wait for the client to pull you and say, look, this is not working. Okay? Be proactive, but be proactive with a mitigation plan if the solution is not possible. Okay, so that's very important. Number two. Number three is be transparent. Don't put things under the rug that will boil and will end up making them being embarrassed for not meeting their KPIs because you didn't communicate. And I think what I would add is also invest in educating your client. I mean, this has been my biggest challenge for the past 10 years in management consulting, and I understood that the quicker I do this, the better, because you have to understand that client is driven maybe by KPIs, by the pressure of confirming in a new role. I have worked with clients which were it's their first time since they're a VP, right? You're their first project. You're the reason why they got promoted to VP. So imagine making a mess out of that. So you can cut the tension in those meetings. I mean, in terms of steak, right? You can cut it with a knife. So it's extremely important to educate them because then they can circle back and together you can join hands and find the solutions. Now, if you don't do this, you're just going to get a series of inputs. And this is again a segue towards another question, which we have contract KPIs and reality KPIs, which comes as a result of not investing in this education exercise, in how we set expectations and what to expect from each other in this partnership, as Brittany said. So that would be one of the lessons that I've learned over here. And sticking to this client side of things, guys, I think we've all been into projects in which the KPIs, where we're talking about the MPS or CSAT over there, is affected by uncontrollable detractors. Otherwise said, it's not our fault that things are going south in terms of how clients are perceiving their brand, their product, and the experience they have with their product. So how do we cope with that? How do we manage that? How do we manage that client relationship when we can't really help them or do much because they're messing things with their own product or processes?
I'll jump in on that one. That one is that is a challenging question, Darius. And the reason I say that, and my tone's changing a bit because it is a serious question, is I think that those first and foremost, I want to start from the very beginning, and that is the statement of work in the very beginning has to be reviewed with a magnifying glass, and everybody picking it apart from the very beginning. Brittany's fantastic at that kind of stuff. She will get in there and she will read something and she will read into it in such a way that she will find she will start coming up, Cream, or anybody for that matter, Cream, what about this? Is this how it's being read? They didn't articulate this quite well enough. What happens if this happens? She's very, very good at that. I look at things quite frankly. I look at things face value. I look at it and go, okay, we can probably do that. And so I have to challenge myself and I have to read into it like Brittany does. And I have to look into it and say, wait, what does this really mean? What's the things that can go wrong? And you've got to be able to to challenge those things, to be and think ahead to say what's going to happen. Now your client may come back and say, non-negotiable, you've got to be at this KPI. Mm-hmm. But to your point, and I think what you were alluding to, Darius, what if things go sideways later on down the road? Then you've got to come back and you've got to be able to have your analysis done to be able to say,
I told you guys.
Loud and clear. This is the KPI. Sorry?
I was just, giving you like a short line. I told you guys, right? I showed you guys. I signaled this, right? Exactly. That's what you're trying to say. pointed out a red flag on this clause or on this KPI.
Exactly. And to have your analysis to say, with this information, the KPI can or cannot be hit, meaning that maybe it is in our jurisdiction or in our backyard that we need to be able to clean things up and be able to hit that KPI, and we'll do that due diligence. Maybe the numbers don't match to what the customer is expecting at all. I found that with one of my clients, where I was going through it, and we said that there needed to be solution within a certain period of time for a customer solution. And we went back and we said, based on this information, there's no way to hit the target that you have because of the processes that are currently in place. If we change some of these processes, we think we're able to hit these targets. But if not, we've got to either come to an agreement here or a negotiation to figure out what the best solution is. That's kind of my take on it. But Brittany, you tell me if I'm missing something there, because you're a lot better at it than I am, I think.
Yeah. I think that to really answer this question, I want to take it on both levels, right? Because it definitely impacts the lower levels, but obviously it impacts the higher levels too. So I'm gonna kind of take it from both ends. On the lower end side of things, like your team leads and your QA, your trainers and your agents, the front line essentially, they don't know any of that back and forth happening with the client. So you as the director or the ops manager, whoever you are, you need to make sure that you're being transparent with your team of what's expected and what's happening. However, where I see a lot of people kind of have a miss there is we get stuck in just the numbers of it, right? And when I say that, we get into the mentality of, yes, you're meeting the number, no, you're not meeting the number. And that's all that the higher ends of leadership tend to look at sometimes, because they don't interact with everybody else on the lower ends. So it turns into much more of that numbers game. But we have to take a step back and we have to look at what is affecting that number. And that comes into what Kareem was just saying, right? You need to do your homework. You need to analyze it. You need to look into it. And you need to say, okay, are we not meeting the number because the number's not realistic? Or are we not meeting the number because we're not doing X, Y, Z? Those are two completely different solutions that need to be taken. But in order for you to get there, you have to do the homework first. And I'm a very, very firm believer with all of my teams that I work with, where whenever I talk to them about any of their KPIs, any of their numbers, I tell them, look, I have to pay attention to the number. I have to speak to the number. That's my job. Your job is to speak to your behaviors, right? And what behaviors are impacting the number. If you're doing everything I tell you to do and your number is not meeting, that's my job. I'll figure it out. I'll work with the client. What's missing? I'm going to analyze it. Then that's where I take it to the client side of things. And I say, okay, look, this is all the research we have. This is what's impacting it. This is why we're not meeting this number. So can we come to a solution similar to what Kareem was saying? And sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't agree. And when they don't agree, then you have to come to the table with more data, more analysis. And that's where that transparency in the client partner relationship is really, really important, so that you can bring that all to the table. But you can't do any of that without doing all of your own homework, quote unquote, first, right?
Yeah, and I think I definitely wish I had a Brittany Karim to actually spar on this statement of work kind of exercise that you guys had. But I was less fortunate from this point of view, but I was very fortunate to be in close contact with the senior vice president and head of legal from Move, right? Satish, if you're watching this, I miss our sparring sessions. And Satish was like a vast, huge bibliography of what can go south with a DNA of 20 years at a company that has grown, from just one location to a global scale. So you can imagine what kind of Rocky I had in my corner to actually go through these statements of work. But to go a bit at the numbers. Whenever I was talking to the first line or second line, because I usually enjoy going a bit in the trenches to get that feel, that smell of what's happening, what's not working over there. Instead of numbers can tell you. We know the theory, and it's great. I mean, I think you guys, if I wake you up at 3 a.m. and ask you 10 things to actually change in theory to improve NPS, you're gonna tell me in less than 3 minutes, right? But that's theory. I mean, we know that's what was taught. But going in the trenches, I try to go with folks and tell them, okay, let's park the numbers and the KPIs and tell me what's missing. And you would see them, opening and saying like, you know what, their trading didn't cover this. You know what, we're using this kind of third-party tool which is causing a delay or an echo or something, right? So you would get to some core reasons why some folks are not performing. I'm talking not agent related over here, that you wouldn't hear from your RCA or from the drilling done by the QA folk over there, unless you would actually go and talk to the folks in the trenches. So I think one of the messages that I want to pass on with this occasion, listening to what you guys said, is to make sure that you ask your folks, your team first, and give them a chance to speak beyond those numbers and beyond being afraid that it's going to be a penalty for them if they complain or if they tell the truth, and start building on that, because that's firsthand data. It can be biased, but that's why you have your support structure roles also over there, right? So, and just to summarize, based on what you said, we have contracts. We have to read those contracts carefully. We have to review them together with the client, and we encourage everyone to be bold and speak out loud from the beginning, or at least signal them in writing. So when the day would come, you would actually say, guys, as you said, Karim, I told you about this. You shouldn't have burned those steps to say so. Is price the most important aspect for the client these days?
I think if you asked me that 10, 15 years ago, I would say yes. And that's when so much was going offshore. And there's still a good portion offshore. There's no doubt. There's a good footprint offshore. But at the end of the day, I've seen so many clients that weren't quite satisfied with the communication or strategic skills being offshore that they chose to come back onshore, and that was part of the thing. So that's for U.S. companies. That's just for U.S. companies. That's not globally. And I'm talking in the sense that the same thing would be happening in Asia or in Europe or what have you, or South America. But the point I'm trying to make is that when one of the things that I've ran into, not necessarily now, just in my career, is that programs were lowballed at one point or another so that we could win a logo. And at the end of the day, they were lowballed so much that it wasn't quite conducive to the success of the program. And one of the things that I've seen leadership come in and do at certain organizations is come in and say, don't undervalue yourself. You're more valuable than you think. Don't undervalue yourself. Price is a factor, yes, and you can go, and the reason I was mentioning the offshore work is because you can go to the Philippines for $15 an hour, $17 an hour, whatever the price might be for that logo or that vertical. But anybody can do that. But at the same time, if you're adding the value and you feel like you have the value add to be able to be on shore in the States at $37, $40, $42, depending again, whatever the right price is at any given time, for any vertical that you might be working under, then you shouldn't sell yourself short. You just shouldn't sell yourself short. It's not all about price. It's about what the value add that geo or that company or that vertical is going to be, bringing, or that team is going to be bringing under that vertical, I should say. I'll stop there, Brittany. If you want to add.
Very interesting. Brittany, please.
Yeah, I think he hit it right on the head, right? It's not all about the money. While the money is definitely a very important factor, it's not everything in the market that we're experiencing right now. And what Kareem is kind of alluding to there is what's the X factor, right? And this is a common discussion that we talk about when trying to bring new logos on, is what sets us apart from our competitors, from everyone else. And the price may give you a little bit of an edge, but at the end of the day, the question there is, what's the company culture? How do your employees feel about you? And are you producing the results that the client is interested in, right? And those things far outweigh the pricing at the end of the day. How your people feel about you and how your relationship is going to be with that client is more important than any price tag, in my opinion, that you can put on that relationship. That's what keeps the client coming back again and again and again, and that's how you grow the business further.
Yeah, this is very interesting because you guys gave me the opportunity now to come back to some of my sales folks that really were coming and telling me, Darius, I can't sell this unless it's this price, right? And I would come back and say, what that means, I can give someone a very low salary, and that means that their comfort and living conditions would not be as good as the industry standards, and we have a huge competition, and that's not going to keep people over here. That will also backfire because if we give people industry margin salaries, we're not going to meet the profitability KPIs that we need to meet as a business and as an organization. So my response was, focus on selling value. Don't focus on bidding for the lowest price, because that anyone can outbid you over there. Can you imagine going at an auction and saying, I'm going to do this for $16 an hour, and someone else would say, can I get a 15.50? Can I get a 15? Can I get a 14.50? Right? You don't want to go in that war, right? I mean, there's a client for everyone. You don't have to win all clients, but if you can understand what your strong suit is, where your experience, I would definitely pay a $100 for a client that has 30 years of experience on the U.S. market, as opposed to someone that is giving me that at half a price or three-quarters of that price, but has just had 2 or 3 years, right? There has to be a difference somewhere. There has to be a different USP out there. So my message was always sell value. Don't just sell a number out there. So that was extremely important for me. Is there anything else on this topic, guys, that you would like to touch?
Not on this one. I think it's covered.
Okay. Okay, because I have the tendency to switch between topics quite fast. So sorry I didn't ask you about the earlier questions also. Guys, what do you think is the cure for attrition and keeping spirits high in your teams?
I've always gone by kind of a four-step process, or a four-step coaching process. And that is that, for me, if I was a supervisor today and I was sitting with an agent, or even if I'm sitting down with one of my team members, I try to make sure that I'm going to be covering 4 items in my one-on-one. The first one is I'm going to find out what their goals are and what they need to do to hit and achieve those goals. The second thing is what is the career path that they want to take. Career pathing is everything to reduce attrition, in my opinion. The third thing is, what's the monetary goal that they want to achieve based off of the targets that they've set for themselves, and for what is it that they what delegation can I give them? So the reason I say those four things is that if they're about to leave their home and their spouse says, you know what, it's a beautiful day out. Why don't you stay home, sit by the pool with me, and we'll have a great day. Don't go into work today. If they can sit there and say, you know what, I'm about to hit my target. I just went over it with my boss. I'm about to hit my target. I really better get into work. Or there's a position coming open soon, and I don't want to get anything bad on my attendance report, and I just don't think it's good if I miss. So let me go to work, and then we'll make it up another day. The third thing is I'm about to hit my target, like I said earlier, and I'm going to hit some money. I'm going to hit my monetary goals. So let's not miss out on that by me being staying and sitting home by the pool. And the first one is, you know what, my boss gave me some delegation, and they're counting on me to do that report today. So I really have to go in today, but we'll make it up another day. If they can say one or two of those things before they leave the door, their spouse is going to feel better. They're going to feel better about going into work. They have targets, they have goals, they have ambitions, they have reasons to be there. If not, any one of us could sit there and say, yeah, let's go sit by the pool, So it's a matter of making sure that they're set up with vision for where their targets and goals are, so that they feel that there's not only an accountability, but an aspiration to be there. Brittany, I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, so to follow up with that, it really boils down to what Kareem was saying was, what's their why, right? And everyone's why is different, and it's important as the business leaders to ask that question and know the answer to that question. And this is a common practice that I do with my teams all the time, where I'll go in with my team managers or my team leads or what have you, and I'll say, hey, what is Susie's why? Why does she come to work? And if they can't answer that question, then I tell them, do better, talk to them more, be more transparent, try to get to that why, right? Because to Kareem's point, is some people's why might be, hey, I'm about to meet my goal. I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to make more money, whatever it is, right? And that's a big motivator. Everyone has a reason that they come to work. And if you can figure out what that reason is, and you can cultivate on that reason and help to grow whatever that reason, help them get closer to that goal, right? Closer to that why, then you're going to automatically motivate people. But in addition to that, there's the factors of prioritizing your people over everything else. Safety is a big factor that motivates people. I have worked on teams before where, maybe the pay is not where they want it to be, because let's face it, everybody wants more money. Correct. You ask anybody ever in the world if they're making as much as they would ever dream of making, and they're going to say no, right? Everybody wants more money. So that's not really a factor. A lot of times people fall victim into saying, well, I can't motivate my team because we're not paying them enough. That's not the case. There's other ways that you can motivate your people to show up for work. And I'm a firm believer that the basis of that is safety. How does your team feel in your presence? Do they feel like, oh my gosh, if I make this mistake, am I going to get fired? Then they're not feeling safe with you. They're not going to be motivated, right? But on the flip side, if they come in and they say, okay, I know that if I make a mistake, Brittany is going to coach me. She's going to help me to grow from that mistake and to learn and to do better, so that I can be even better in the future and not, have to be worried about losing my job that day. Then that's a completely different mentality. And safety goes a very, very long way in supporting your team as a leader.
Wow. And again, as a moderator, my role is to make the quick executive summaries of everything that you guys pointed out so far. So I think it's finding out quickly what makes them tick. That's a very important component in fighting with attrition and keeping spirits high and people motivated around you. if we're talking about, getting to larger numbers and different job levels, and you can't have those one-on-ones with everyone, I think we should always go back to Maslow's pyramid and understand that there are certain needs we need to satisfy folks before we can go to the next level. And if we're not going to do it, our competitors will do it, and we're going to lose good talent. So that's the second one. And I think Brittany was very, very much focused on this spirit of protecting the team and leading the team and making them feel comfortable with what happens and if things go south in general. I would take this to I would package this a bit differently if I can borrow it a bit, Brittany, and say that as a leader, I think it's extremely important in finding attrition to find the right balance between carrot and stick, because let's face it, we also need a stick sometimes for some profiles, and we need to make people understand that there are certain consequences for not delivering as they've promised, right? When they signed that employment contract. It's just my point of view. Maybe I sound a bit tougher over here, but I think the carrot needs to stay in a certain relationship with the stick over there. Okay, guys, I have two more questions. I know we ran a bit over the time over here, but I still have two more questions. If that's okay with you, I'm just gonna ask them and be a bit, overstretching here a bit. Um, what I want to talk is about a very sensitive matter when we grow in an accelerated way within a company. We, as we mentioned previously, we might not always keep up with the best practices from that growth, right? It's explosive growth. And I want to talk about the downside of lack of governance internally and with the client. And what do I mean by governance? You've already mentioned weekly business meetings, quarterly reviews, internal monthly reviews. That's the governance that I have in mind. And the other one is not respecting the matrix of support structure roles. When we say we need QAs, we need QAs. When we say we need program directors, we need program directors. And there's a ratio per capita over there that we need to follow. And sometimes we just can't keep up with, sticking to the formula because we grow in an explosive way. So what would be your intake on this scenario?
Do you want to go first, Brittany? Sorry, what John thought.
Yeah, you're good. It's a fair question, right? And we really experience it a lot of the times in the industry, and sometimes it's easy to just take it and say, okay, the client says I can have 4 team leads. I'm gonna put 10 people under each person. Boom, boom, boom. I'm done. We're ready to go. We're rocking and rolling. And that's very easy to do. But then there's other times where we come in where the statement of work is signed and it only says, hey, you can have 1 team lead and you have a head count that you need a support of 75 people. So good luck. How are you going to make that happen? Right. And I think that's kind of what Darius is talking about here is what do you do in those moments? And it's not easy. Let me start with that. It's not easy. You have to get creative. You have to work with your team. Sometimes you have to look into, is there a shared resource maybe that I can pull from somewhere else? Is it a need that I need this person all the time? Like, do I need them dedicated, or can I maybe borrow a trainer or borrow QA and kind of on loan type of situation happening, right? So it does cause you to get kind of creative. But to your point, Darius, it's essential for the business to run appropriately to have those different levels. And sometimes we get stuck in the nuances of, I can't do this because the pricing doesn't line up and I'm not going to be able to bill for the right XYZ or whatever it is. And we need to take a step back sometimes and think about, how is this affecting my teams, right? And that's the part that we don't think about, because we can sit here at the high levels all day long and say, yeah, I can put 75 people under one team lead. No big deal.
You could. You can actually do that.
Yeah, like on paper,
Yeah.
we're good to go. But how is that team lead, one, going to feel? And two, how are all those employees going to feel? Because they're not going to get the attention that they need from everyone else. And at the end of the day, those agents at the bottom line, they could care less about what you're billing the client. That's something we need to think of, obviously, at the higher ends, and that's where the strategic business piece of things come in. But all those agents care about is, am I supported? Am I getting what I need? Do I feel like when I have a question, my question's going to get answered? And those are the balancing act items that we have to kind of pay attention to. And sometimes that comes back to me as a leader at the higher ends. I have to come back to my boss or my partners or stakeholders, whoever it is, and I need to push back, and I need to say, look, we need to talk to the client. This isn't working. I need to support my team. I need to do this. I know that has been a big basis of everything I've been saying so far is, support your team. You need to be the leader first. You need to lead by example. But it's really something I'm passionate about. And Kareem hears me say these things all the time. I'm on calls all day long, and I say, no, Kareem, you need more team leads. You need to do more of this. You need to figure this out. And we go back and forth about it all the time. But it's because it's so fresh in my mind of being that agent where when I had to reach out to my team lead, no one was there. And that is the worst thing to experience, right? And then on top of that, be held accountable and, have an escalation happen and the client come back and now everybody's coming down on me. And at the end of the day, I'm saying, well, I reached out and nobody answered me. And that should never happen, right? So we need to be prepared to create a cohesive structure that's going to support the team, but also, balancing. You got to make up your quota somewhere else. So what are you going to do with it? And that's getting creative sometimes.
To that point, Brittany brought up a lot of good points, and let me give you an example of something that I saw in a previous life, and that was that had a small program come on board, 24/7, 365 were the hours of operation. But there's only 25 people, so you only needed two supervisors, two team leaders. So then you have to think of, how am I going to have two team leaders cover the hours of operation of 24/7, 365? It's physically impossible. So you need to get to Brittany's point. You need to get creative. Where can I find some other resources? Where can I find some shared resources? Where can I possibly create some roles that are not going to cut into what is budgeted for the program to be successful? And you've got to take some of these things that Brittany mentioned and start, one, challenging the team, challenging yourself, and if need be, challenge the client and go back to them and say, we're not sure if both parties here quite thought this through, and we need to maybe think about making some adjustments within the contract or SOW to see if we can make this work a little bit more conducively for everybody. Because right now it's not going to be that way. So it's a balancing act, and Brittany touched on it perfectly, really.
Yeah, I think we have to ask these challenging questions. We touched this already, and we have to get there. We have to be blunt. We have to be open. And I think it's also a matter of showing that you're genuinely invested by doing so, right? Because if you ask these questions, it means that you have at your heart, you have the best to actually make everyone succeed or gain the most out of that partnership in which you are. And what would be your piece of advice with respect to dealing with the pressure that comes from the expectation of delivering fast, good, immediate, and with impact, with results? Because this is kind of a vexating pressure out there. It's not easy to live with it. I mean, we did mention as leaders that we have to walk the walk, eat last, lead by example. That's fine. But what can we share with others? What would be your advice in helping them deal better with this kind of suffocating pressure?
So pressure really comes from, in my mind at least,
Mm-hmm.
comes from the fact that uh, that you're not going to be able to meet an expectation that was set there, and then that's where you see the pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you see the pressure, and the only way that I've seen to be able to meet to be able to have the, the the proper preparation to be able to meet those expectations is just that, making sure that you are fully prepared to look at the program and the plan of actions in place are going to outline everything for you to be able to be successful. And it's and what I'm trying to get at is that if you're not being able to think of the things that can go wrong, that's where you're caught off the back end. I'll give you a quick case in point. The previous life, I I was working with a client, and we were going through all the steps to carry off a brand new launch and everything to go good. And then at the last minute, not outlined in the SOW, the client says, "Well, we know you guys are doing your background checks, but we need to do our own background checks."
Mm-hmm.
And now we have, then you'll find yourself having maybe only a few days before launch. And then you're sitting there thinking, how is this going to work? Because it's going to take 5 to 10 days for the client to do the background checks, right? So this was something that came out of the woodwork that nobody really thought about prior. It was not outlined in the SOW. It kind of blindsided everybody. And that's where the pressure comes from. Now, what steps are we going to take to mitigate this and to fix this? Are we going to put steps? Are we going to be able to work with the client and fix this right away? Or are we going to have to talk about mitigating timelines and deadlines so that it can be continued to be a successful launch and communicate that appropriately? But it's a matter of really, when you're outlining your plans of action, whether it be towards a launch, towards hitting targets, goals, that you are, when you set up your plan of action, your glide path, that everybody on the team is looking at those plans of actions and looking at those glide paths and poking holes in it to see what can go wrong so that we can be prepared ahead of time so we don't feel the pressure at the end of the day. It's purely preparation. If everything goes as planned, no one feels the stress and it's a success and everyone's happy. It's when the things go wrong and you don't have that mitigation already outlined of what you can do if it does go wrong, that's where it gets messy.
Basically,
I'll stop there for your comment.
Sorry, go ahead. Just a small bracket, Brittany, just to make a recap. So basically, you're saying train like a Navy SEAL, even though if the mission is going to the grocery shop.
Yeah.
Roger that.
I think that's a great analogy.
Okay, yeah. Roger that. I'll continue the training. Please, Brittany.
Yeah, that's it. It's really spot on, right? Preparedness is so important, and being proactive is so important. But you also have to keep in mind that there's going to be outside elements, and there's going to be uncontrollables, and you have to be in that mindset of kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit through that whole proactivity discussion that you're having, as in what may go wrong. And if it does inevitably go wrong, how are we mitigating it? How are we fixing it, right? And that's really important, because there's going to be things that cause you to get off course. And that's with everything, whether it's a new business coming into play, you have a team happening, or you're just running your day-to-day life. You're always going to have obstacles that kind of come up out of the woodwork, like Kareem said. But how are you going to get back on track? And how are you going to learn from that? How are you going to grow? And that's where the lessons learned piece of things come in. And you don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right? But also, in addition to that, I know that Kareem and Darius, you both kind of alluded earlier in our discussion that you got to definitely work very, very hard, and you have to be the hardest worker in the room. And having that perception of things is definitely important to show that you are very hardworking. And this is where I kind of come in and play devil's advocate a lot of the times too. And Kareem probably knows where I'm going to go with this too. But you also have to have a good work-life balance, right? Yes, you have to be able to meet your deliverables. You have to be the rock star. You got to make your leader shine and your business shine and all of these things. But to answer your original question, Darius, of how do you manage that kind of stress that happens with some of these things, it's the outside of work things as well, not just the inside of work things, which obviously Kareem hit right on the head. He has vast years of experience with all of that. But you have to set boundaries for yourself. You have to set boundaries for your team. You have to have things to look forward to outside of work, spend family time. I've seen so many times where leaders get so burnt out because they're going and going and going and going, and they have to say, I need to be the first person in the office and the last person in the office every single day. And then you have people that come in and they say, Brittany, do you ever sleep? You're always here, And I've fallen victim to that in one of my previous lives. I worked a 24/7 contract as well, and I was in that mentality of, if somebody calls me at 3 in the morning, I need to answer the phone. I need to always make these things happen. If the client's calling, I'm answering right away. And eventually I got into a groove of things where I set boundaries, and I set that mentality of, when I'm in the office, I'm going to be the hardest worker. You're going to get all of your deliverables. You can count on me. I'm dependent, all that good stuff. But come 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., whenever my out of office is for that day, I will not be answering the phone unless it is a literal emergency, which should be far and few in between. And this is what I teach all my leaders too. Unless it is an actual physical fire, it can wait until morning. You answering that email 2 seconds after it's sent versus in the morning 12 hours later isn't going to change anything. Right? Unless it's one of those far and few in between instances where it does. But we need to be able to set those boundaries and be able to keep that nice balance, because otherwise you're just going to get burnt out. You're going to get sick, and then you're of no use to anybody. Now you're down for the count, right?
I think the takeaway from here is the best cure for keeping this balance is also be a human being. Have a life also after 6 p.m. So
yes, I joke around with people all the time. One of the first activities I do in my leadership classes is I go around the room and I tell everybody, share your hobbies. And one of the things that I say right at the beginning, and I kind of make it a joke, but I'm not joking in the instance, is I say I want everybody to share your hobbies. And if you say that your hobby is working, you need to get a new hobby. Right?
you need to get a life. You need to buy a life. Let's hope they're leasing. Yeah, guys.
Speaking of that, go ahead, Darius.
No, please. I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So what I was going to say is I think I struggle with it a little bit. And as I mentioned, I try and do my triathlons or cycling as far as that's my meditation. Where if my wife knows that I'm stressed, she'll sit there and say, "Why don't you go for a ride for a little bit?" And I'll come back a completely different person.
Nice.
Or go for a run for a little bit, and I'll come back completely different. I think my wife does it better than anybody. Where she has a work-life balance. She works for Oracle, and she has a very she does a lot of client interfacing with the clients themselves and the Oracle engineers. She has a stressful job. She's a rock star at every day, but she loves working out. So what does? She actually goes teaches classes early in the morning before she works, and late at night when she's done working, or in the evening when she's done working. So she has that work-life balance where she gets to go and do the things that she loves, but at the same time, making sure that her work isn't interrupted at all. And just to Brittany's point, wherever you feel that you can find that meditation or that work-life balance that's going to make you feel like you're getting something else out of your day other than just your work, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have leaders out there all the time. And I've seen it on my teams. I've struggled with it in my past self as well, where, they'll be sick as a dog and they're still working. And I'm like, you need to log out. And they're, oh, no, I have all these deliverables. I have to do all these things.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand you need to do those things, but let's delegate them to somebody else so that you can get to feeling better. Because if you're staying sick, again, you're not helping anybody. And that also goes into, you hear leaders say all the time, oh, when was the last time you took a vacation? Oh, it's 10 years ago. I never take vacations, right? I'm a firm believer in this. I think came from my AT&T days, back in my agent days and everything. But I'm a firm believer. I will take vacation every year. I'm going to make sure that everything is set in stone before I go, and Kareem knows this from our past experiences. But I'm going to give you plenty of notice. But I'm also going to tell you, if you call me during that vacation, I'm not answering the phone because I've delegated everything else. You have points of contact, so you know who you need to talk to. And I kind of laugh about that a little bit because Kareem knows last year for my birthday, little side comment here, for my birthday last year when I was working with Kareem, I took 2 weeks off. And hey, by the way,
such a long birthday
during Black Friday, which was the busiest time of the year. And Kareem's like, oh, you're taking that time off? And I was like, yes. You've known about it since February, 11 months in advance. I prepared the team, like everyone's ready to go. And Kareem knows that everything went off perfectly. Business ran fine, nothing burned down. We were good to go. And that comes into that proactiveness that we talked about, right? And being prepared.
Yeah, make sure your presence is felt even when you're absent. That takes a lot of legwork and preparation. Thank you so much, guys, for handling these challenging questions and help me understand that I do have a hobby, a strong hobby. It's having stoic conversations with savvy folks like you for 2.5 or 2.5 plus hours without interruption. So you made me realize this. Thank you so much for taking part in this conversation and bringing these valuable inputs.
Yeah,
absolutely, Darius. Thanks so much for having us.